murder followed by suicide. Andrew and Dawn Searle's bodies were found at their home in Le Pic, around an hour north of Toulouse. Miss Searle's body was found.
Jetzt links fahren und der A803 folgen in Richtung Kalkintelac.
The prosecutor in Montpellier, in charge of the case, told the BBC there's no evidence that another person was.
Bitte in 150 Metern links abbiegen auf die A803 in Richtung Glasgow. Jetzt links abbiegen und danach rechts abbiegen. Demnächst links abbiegen.
The West of Scotland MSP accused the party of becoming Trumpesque in both style and substance. A quick word on travel now in Edinburgh.
Bitte in 250 Metern links halten in Richtung Denniston.
The Gilmerton Junction. That is due to a breakdown, but traffic is coping well just now. And it's another dry and bright day with plenty of sunshine. Cloudy conditions will affect Shetland. Temperatures will reach 15 to 18 Celsius for most. And that's BBC Radio Scotland News.
Ina, thanks very much for that. Now let's look ahead to sport this lunchtime. Here's Andy Burke.
The UK is set to host the 2035 Women's World Cup as the sole valid bidder for the tournament. FIFA President Gianni Infantino says England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland submitted a joint expression of interest last month to hold the World Cup across the home nations. Scotland sits second in the World's Men's Curling Championship round-robin table after recovering from a loss to Switzerland to beat Norway 8-4. The Scots face Sweden this afternoon, and you can watch that live on the BBC Sports Scotland website and the iPlayer. And in the next hour we're going to hear about a new era for athletics with the Grand Slam track event kicking off tomorrow with Scotland's Josh Kerr among a host of track stars competing in Jamaica.
Andy, thanks very much for that. Now to our main story this lunchtime. That the Prime Minister
Bitte in 150 Metern rechts abbiegen auf die A8 in Richtung Glasgow.
With cool and calm heads. Last night the President imposed a universal 10% tax on all imports to the US, with even higher rates for countries he claimed were ripping off America, putting China at the top of that list. The EU says it's a major blow to the world economy, and Sir Keir Starmer reiterated his priority was to secure a trade deal with America. The UK Business Secretary Jonathan Reynolds has told MPs that the UK government is keeping all options on the table, including retaliatory tariffs.
To enable the UK to have every option open to us in future, I am today launching a request for input on the implications for British businesses of possible retaliatory action. This is a formal step necessary for us to keep all options on the table. We will seek the views of UK stakeholders over 4 weeks until the 1st of May 2025 on products that could potentially be included in any UK tariff response.
Well, let's get the latest now with our Westminster correspondent Rajdeep Sandhu. Rajdeep, how has this gone down then at Westminster?
Well, I think from what we're hearing from people, there was some relief that the UK was at the bottom of that table that President Trump was waving around yesterday in front of the cameras, and that it wasn't as high as other countries. I mean, that is essentially what we have heard from the business secretary. Just played a clip there from Jonathan Reynolds in the House today. He talked about the fact that no country was able to get an exemption from these tariffs. Remember, that was a hope from the UK government that perhaps beforehand they would be able to get a carve out and not be included in that long list of countries. He said that the UK was, on the lowest rung of tariffs at 10%. He said it vindicated the pragmatic approach taken, but of course said that they were disappointed. And then he talked about the intensive discussions on an economic deal, said that those were still continuing, and that he said a deal is possible and favourable. He talked about staying calm and clear-eyed. We've heard that message many, many times. And he also kind of criticised those in the House of Commons who are saying that we should be following other countries with perhaps a bit more of a robust challenge. But as you heard in that clip there, then did say they weren't, I think in that way where the government has been saying, nothing's off the table, they are launching this consultation to ask businesses about retaliatory action, and he said that was to give businesses a say. He said if at any point, a deal looked like it was about to happen, that process would stop. So that was quite interesting. I think that is going to last around a month, and he said it was going to go on until May. So it's quite interesting that they are taking a more formal step around that part of this, even though in terms of kind of tone that we've been hearing from the UK government, they're very keen to stress that they think the approach so far has worked in the UK's favour, and that is the kind of approach they're going to continue. And again, we heard that as well from Keir Starmer this morning, who was talking to business leaders in Downing Street.
Do you think there is a sense, though, that the UK is maybe now being pressurised into a trade deal with the US?
Bitte in 200 Metern rechts abbiegen in die Straße Drygate.
This morning is that he actually said in his remarks to businesses that were on camera that he wasn't going to be pressurised into a deal. He said, "I will only strike a deal if it is in our national interest." And I think that was the Prime Minister trying to show strength, that while he's being an ally to the US, and there is, a perception from some that the UK is perhaps in a weak position or is being kind of walked all over by the US, although others in government would disagree with that. I think that was the Prime Minister trying to show that he does have strength. And also what's quite interesting is that these talks for a trade deal have been ongoing for years,
There was threats of various tariffs to be put on the automotive industry from the EU, and at that time the then President of the European Commission, Jean-Claude Juncker, was able to deter him from doing that. But there is a feeling this time that those sorts of measures that worked 7 years ago would be completely inadequate on this occasion. However, in the interim, there has been a sort of change in process here in Europe, in Brussels. There's a new anti-coercion instrument that came into force in December 2023, and that's a new structure which actually allows the EU to sort of calibrate collective responses, getting all the 27 EU member states together to come up with counter tariffs to detrimental third country policies. However, it's quite burdensome, it's quite cumbersome, it doesn't happen quickly. So there's no indication that we're going to see immediate countermeasures. The initial response from Ursula von der Leyen, who was speaking today in Uzbekistan and was speaking earlier in the week in Strasbourg at the European Parliament meeting, is that we have plans. The EU is prepared to respond, but dialing down again, saying it's not too late to address concerns through negotiations. Let's move from confrontation to negotiation. And in light of that, she is actually sending Trade Commissioner Maroš Šefčovič to talk to his US counterparts tomorrow. So he is saying, he was tweeting today that unjustified tariffs inevitably backfire, but we'll act in a calm, carefully phased, unified way to calibrate our response. But I think as much as the EU is seeking to speak with one voice, is saying we've got preparedness on our side, is saying we have got cards to bring to the table and there are measures we could take, it is inevitable that different EU countries will be hit by these tariffs in very different ways. Yeah, indeed. Jennifer, thank you very much for that. Jennifer Baker there in Brussels. So what is in it for the Americans, and what does Donald Trump hope that his new plan for tariffs will do for the US? Well, Kelly Meyer is Washington correspondent for News Nation and joins me live now. Kelly, how has it gone down in the States, first of all?
Yeah, thanks for having me. So it's been, I'm at the White House every day, and yesterday there was a lot of talk of Happy Liberation Day is what the White House has been calling this, and President Trump dubbed it with his Rose Garden event yesterday.